Mr. Mayor, but my first order of business is that today, of all days, you are the talk of New York City right now. Everybody's talking about you. You're stealing headlines and what have you because you talked about how you haven't left the Democratic Party has left you. That's the quote everybody's been parading around all over the place right now. As we sit here today, how are you feeling about your administration, what you've accomplished, and most importantly, the support or lack thereof you've received from the Democratic Party?
Well, it's added the theme of the working class people. And when you stop talking about working class issues and people are hurting and you having this intellectual conversation and have a philosophical approach of just addressing what are people feeling every day. And I have never left the streets. On the subways. I would stop in the middle of the night when barbershops closed down. I would go inside and sit down, smoke a cigar, drink a little Hennessy with the people inside and just feel them.
Right.
And they're saying that the party's not talking to us. And when I say the party, I'm not talking about people who are registered Democrats. I'm talking about those who are putting out the messages of what is important to the Democratic Party. And they have left the average working class person and individuals. And that is what I'm trying to say to the party, that, you know, it's not like I abandoned the party. The party has abandoned what working class people have been fighting for.
One of you, you deal with this, and you will continue to deal with this a hell of a lot more than me. I'm just your friendly neighborhood sports reporter that ventures into other areas of discussion. But I've been taking a lot of heat because of my willingness to call out some of the things that I've seen from the Democratic Party. And it's almost like there's supposed to be this onus, this level of obligation as black men that we're supposed to have to the Democratic Party. And clearly you're being challenged on that now because of the positions and the stances that you have been willing to take. As a black man, not just the mayor of New York City, how do you feel when you hear people come to you with that kind of attitude?
Listen, brother, this is going to be one hell of a conversation, man. People don't even realize what it is to be a man of color, to be in charge of the most important city on the globe. We need to really understand that. I'm the mayor of the most important city on the globe, only the second mayor of color. Mayor Dinkins was the first, and I'm the second. I inherited a city that was engulfed in COVID, 220,000 migrants and asylum seekers. Crime was through the roof. Unemployment with black and brown people was high. You were looking at our children were not learning. I've been on Rikers Island more than any other mayor in the history of the city, speaking to inmates and correction officers who both are overwhelmingly black and brown. And so when you look at what I inherited, and then you fast forward to today, with all that we've gone through, we have more jobs in the city's history. More small businesses are open. Black and brown businesses have received billions of dollars in contracts from the city. We have outpaced the state in reading and math. We're doing dyslexia screening so that we won't have 30% of our prison population being dyslexic, like I am.
Right.
What we have done in the city, paying for college tuition for foster care children. Bond raters looked at the city and said, we're going to increase your bond because the way you're managing the crisis. With 220,000 migrants and asylum seekers dropped in our city without any support, we've turned around this city, and there are a lot of haters out there that don't want to acknowledge what this administration have done.
Why do you think that is?
Well, I think it's a combination of things. I was never the chosen candidate. I'm a bald-headed, earring-wearing mayor that's saying that you don't have to have this one stereotypical look to be successful in the city. And I think that there's a lot of people that want to send the signal that, okay, you can't run the city. I'm running the city, and I'm running and navigating us out of crisis, and I'm independent in doing so. You know, there are days that I wake up feeling one way and another way, and we need to be clear on taking these big cities to the next level.
Is that part of the problem, though, Mr. Mayor, in terms of the conflict, the confrontations, the resistance that you may ultimately encounter? Is it the fact that you wake up with independent voice as opposed to being a slave to this binary system that we live in? And you got to take one side or the other. It's all one way or it's all another way. That's what basically folks have been saying for the longest time. And people like yourself seem to be giving the impression, nah, I'm not down for that anymore.
Right. You know, you look at those who want to check off a box, and if you don't fit into all of these items in the box, then you can't be classified as this group or another group. And that's not who we are as individuals and as human beings. We have different beliefs and belief systems. And I focus on that all the time. And this is not new. People fail to realize, go back 30-something years when I was in the police department, 100 blacks in law enforcement who cared. I didn't want to be a cop. Right. I was arrested and beat by police officers at 15 years old. Mm-hmm. Reverend Herbert Daughtry told me, you are going into the police department to fight from within.
Wow.
You know, and when we went in, people called me Uncle Tom, sellout, Negro. But we went in and started one of the most important human rights and civil rights organizations as black police officers. And so there's a long record of looking at my assignment and fulfilling my assignment. Brother, I can't even tell you how painful it was to say I put on that uniform of those who kicked me in my groin over and over again. My brother and I, we were pissing blood for weeks after being assaulted by those cops in the basement of the 103rd Precinct.
And before you became a captain, if I remember correctly, based on my research, before you became a captain within the police department, you were an officer literally speaking out against racism and prejudice all the time, which I might imagine didn't endear you to your colleagues and contemporaries in Boys in Blue.
But you know what was interesting? That many people didn't realize that many of those officers would come to me and say, you know, thank you for what you're doing, because they wanted to go home to their families.
Right.
And they knew that there was a number of cops that were overly aggressive and abusive. And by us talking out, it allowed them to not have to get caught up in that whole web that we were dealing with. And that's the same energy I took into the state senate, took into being the first person of color to be borough president, and to now to become the mayor. I'm the same cat, brother.
Listen, if you're the same, more power to you, because to be honest with you, I don't know if you need to be the same. I think you've already proven who you are. You don't really need to be the same. You can mix it up a little bit. But I'm just looking at some of the things. I'm thinking about crime. I'm thinking about the local economy. I'm thinking about joblessness. All of these issues that have been addressed during your administration. What things have been like for you since COVID, and how basically so many jobs have been restored, et cetera, et cetera. What's been the greatest challenge for you sitting in that seat as mayor of New York City, particularly over the last couple of years?
I love that. That's a great question. The failure to acknowledge the success. And our media, that's why this show is so important. Our media in the city, the failure every day. If you go back and look at from the time I took office, we've been under fire. And the failure to acknowledge the recovery of jobs, cycling us out of COVID, managing 220,000 migrants and asylum seekers and 180,000 on their way, what we're doing around recovering the economy of this city. You don't read about any of that. Yeah. You know, do you know, even when you talk about it in our transit system, when I go into rooms and I say, tell me how many crimes you think we have in the subway every day, people say 200, 300, 400. We have 4.6 million riders a day. We have 6 felony crimes a day. But when you read this city from abroad or in another state, you say, this is a city out of control. This is the safest big city in America. I just acknowledged today with the police commissioner, we removed 20,000 illegal guns off our street, 1,400 ghost guns off our streets. Shootings and homicides are down, crime is down. This city's the safest big city in America.
Let me throw this at you. You know what doesn't make sense to me? What doesn't make sense to me, based on what you just articulated, there was an election that was coming about this past November. We know who won. We know what happened. Prior to that election, the media has been accused of being the liberal media for the longest time. So one would think, when you consider the imagery that was emanating from the right, as they talked about crime in the streets and pestilence and homelessness and migrant crisis and all of these different things, those kind of things that you just articulated, one would think that the liberal media would pounce at the opportunity to articulate that message to the masses, because it would have served their purpose in support of somebody on the left, in this case, Kamala Harris, winning the election. Yet you're sitting here saying that did not happen.
Right.
How do you explain that?
They didn't highlight their message. They didn't highlight the largest city in America. They didn't highlight a person of color as mayor, lifting up this city. There was a success story that should have been the talking point for the Democratic Party. A working class mayor $30 billion back in the pockets of everyday working class people.
Canceling $2 billion in medical debt.
There you are. Think about that, brother.
500,000 New Yorkers.
Think about that.
Okay.
500,000 New Yorkers, we're going to cancel their medical debt. That's the number one cause of bankruptcy, and particularly for black and brown people. So there was a narrative here in the city that we could have talked about. Instead of that, there was a lot of anger because I was saying to them, you got 220,000 migrants and asylum seekers coming to the city, and you guys are not being responsible about securing our borders.
I'm thinking about what you just said. I'm thinking about the fact that when ultimately you were indicted by the federal government on fraud or fraud charges, along with other things, you were the first mayor to be criminally charged while in office in the history of New York City. How much of a role do you believe that played in what wasn't disseminated as it pertains to your administration's accomplishments?
I think a lot, brother. And, you know, many people never read the indictment.
Please.
And if you read the indictment, you're going to see that, you know, at the heart of this is that I was doing my job of telling the fire department, can you do an inspection on the building? This is something, when I sit down with my colleagues, they say, Eric, are you kidding me?
Mm-hmm.
You know, because this is what we do as governmental officials. And I was saying the other day on the other talk show, you know, brother, how hard as it is to just sit back and watch me. I have to take all these body blows right now and can't defend myself, something that I've always...
The lawyers tell you to be quiet, don't say anything. It's sickening. It's sickening, but
there
go
you
ahead.
go. You know, and so it's imperative for me, when you do an analysis of not only what I have said, Biden said his Justice Department is politicized.
Weaponized,
politicized. It's all the same size.
That's right.
You know?
That's right.
Trump said it. And when I saw Biden's speech on why he impeached his family members, he talked about it. Many people didn't read that when you go through prosecutions like this, it's not only your guilt or innocence, it's the financial impact on you. It's just the embarrassment. I spent $2 million, brother. I'm a civil service. What does a civil servant get $2 million from? You know, you have to be able to have people who believe in you enough to donate to your
rally public support.
Exactly.
And so I'm looking at it and listen, granted clemency to a few folks, those kind of things. That's what President Biden has done, and we'll get into that in just a couple of minutes or so. But in light of that, along with campaign finance charges, that's what they're throwing at you as well. You still have been determined to run for re-election in 2025.
I like that.
Case is coming up in April. Re-election,
June,
primaries in June.
Right.
Why?
Right,
What kind of message are you sending by continuing to stay in this race?
And I love that, man. That's a powerful question because many people are in dark places in their personal lives. And, you know, Mommy used to say a dark place is not a burial, it's a planting. And, you know, brother, you know, as you know, with your parents, you know, your dad and, you know, raising a family of six, with the same family
I'm the youngest of six.
Right. Yeah. You know, and Mommy loved all of us, but she adored me. You know,
Same here.
and brother, I used to walk past Mommy's door and raising us on our own. I would hear in that room at night crying. You know, not knowing that she was going to feed us, to keep a roof on her head. But you know what? Every morning she got up. She got up. And so in the first 2 weeks of that indictment, people that I had sleep on my couches when they were thrown out of their homes, people who their children were arrested and I went down and stood with them, people who I stood in the hospitals with when they were going through terrible times, they were tripping over themselves saying, you need to step down, you need to step down. It broke my heart. I'm not even gonna lie to you. But I said to myself, and I thought of Mommy, she died during my election. I said, you know what, Mommy never stepped down, she stepped up. And with all that we were going through, we still moved the city forward. And we knew that I had the right team to get it done. And I'm hoping that people who are in dark places right now, if you're a young man that's sitting in Rikers Island in a jail cell, you're gonna say, listen, my mayor was arrested. If you're a young person with learning disability, my mayor has dyslexia. I want people to look and see my life and say, don't ever give up. And don't let anyone define who you are and what you are. I know who I am, and I'm gonna fight like hell to make sure that people know that.
Are you going to fight like hell to make sure you win the case, or that you are proven to be innocent? Because there's a difference with the voters.
Right. I think the pathway to justice come in many different ways. And one should not allow anyone to block their pathway to justice. It's the role of my attorney, Alex Spiro, to ensure that we pursue every pathway to justice. I did nothing wrong. I should not have been charged. And his job to pursue my justice. My job is that I was elected to represent the city of New York, and on every area, I have never abandoned that responsibility.
You reportedly went to visit President Donald Trump at Mar-a-Lago prior to the inauguration. What can you tell us about that? And is it really about what people are saying it's about? You're hoping that in the event something goes down, and you find yourself being convicted of these allegations, that he's going to pardon you.
And think about that for a moment. This is the President of the United States. I'm the mayor of the largest city in America that lost $6.5 billion due to the previous administration inability to finance the migrant crisis. Why are people asking, is the mayor of the largest city in America going down to meet with the president to talk about how do we recoup some of those losses, and how do we ensure that we move our city forward? It would be irresponsible for me not to go down and speak with the president. And hats off to him. He met with me days before his inauguration. You know, that says a lot about his love for the city, and that says a lot of how much respect he had for this administration on what we are doing. I had to go down to Washington, to Florida, and speak with the president.
It sounds like it makes a whole lot of sense to me, and I don't have any issue with it, but you're going to have critics out there of Mayor Eric Adams of New York City saying the primary reason you went down there is because of your personal legal issues, and that is the priority over the other issues that you just brought up, mainly $6.5 billion that you're trying to recoup. To that you say what?
I say the same thing. I say in New York, oftentimes when I'm speaking to the media, I have 8.3 New Yorkers. I have 35 million opinions.
That's right.
That's it. What it is. You're not doing anything if you don't have people who are going to be attacking you. So the numerical minority with the largest voices that are constantly and consistently, from the day I took office, have consistently talked about everything I am not, even though we showed the success. Those are the same people who are saying, well, your critics say, you know what, that's noise, brother. You know, I say all the time to graduates, let your haters be your waiters when you sit down at the table of success, brother.